Hello. Today I want to talk about offering yourself to yourself. Now, what does that even mean? It's a little enigmatic, perhaps. Yourself here in the relative field, here in the world, could be defined on a surface value level by your name or your family or your place of work or your interests. There might be different ways you would define who you are and that you would define yourself. But this is just the surface value definition of yourself here in the relative field. And this self of yours here in the relative field is, like the relative field, bounded and finite and ever changing. But there is another way to define your self. 2 words, and self is capitalized. So what is this self? When you have a meditation practice where you transcend the relative field, where you transcend your small individual self, transcending your mind and all of the relative field, then the experience is of self with a capital S. Self that is divine being, unfolding itself to itself. When the relative field is transcended and the experience is of divine being, there is no experience of the relative field, no experience of your small individual self, only the experience of divine being. Now, when you return to the experience of the relative field, when you return to the experience of your individual small mind here in the relative field, that experience of divine being transforms your mind and your physiology, and the infusion of divine being from your meditation practice brings you more blissfulness and peacefulness here in the relative field, acting as your small individual self. When you have a regular meditation practice and you're transcending repeatedly, your mind is so transformed by the experience of divine being, it rises to that very status of self, of divine being. Now, you are holding 2 states of consciousness simultaneously. The consciousness of the relative field, alongside the consciousness of divine being, the consciousness of your self. This is enlightenment. And naturally, this first stage of enlightenment develops into the awareness of the Lord, the awareness of your personal God as everywhere and as everything. Now, the consciousness of self, held alongside the consciousness of the relative field, dissolves into one awareness alone. They are unified in the awareness of the Lord, unified in the awareness of your personal God. Your personal God that is everywhere and everything. This is God consciousness, and it is the second stage of enlightenment. So, offer up your small individual self to your universal self of divine being. And then offer up your awareness of yourself as separate from the relative field, separate from the field of activity, and your consciousness of the relative field. Offer these both up to your personal God. Unify the relative and the absolute in the consciousness of God alone. Thank you, beloved Guru. All glory be to thee.